What's up, everybody, and welcome back to the channel. And I know it's been a long time since I've done an update on the Lexus, but we're going to start working on it again. The main reason why we haven't been doing any work to this car is we were missing the transmission mounting bracket. So it's a bracket that bolts onto the back of the Pontiac Solstice transmission that you mount your transmission mount to. It was supposed to come with the transmission, didn't come with the transmission. We've been looking all over the freaking world for this freaking bracket. The only place we can find it is Russia, and given the tensions between the United States and Russia and Ukraine and all that kind of crap, neither one of us want to take the risk of trying to order a part from Russia for this car, because we can order it for an Opel GT because it's the same transmission that came in an Opel GT. So that being said, now I'm going to make a bracket. We've exhausted every avenue that we can find to find this bracket that we're looking for. So I'm going to manufacture one, and then if we find one later, we'll change it out. But for right now, I'm just going to make one and we'll carry on. So once I get the bracket made, we'll get the transmission bolted up. We're going to go ahead and we'll put a battery in it and pump all the old fuel out of the fuel tank, put fresh gas in it, pump some of that through the line to flush the lines out. Then we'll make the fuel line to go from the fuel pump up to the motor, and then we'll more than likely hook up the coolant system, and then we'll start the car. So me and Terry are out here trying out our blacksmithing skills to make a bracket for the transmission. So using an old flywheel as our anvil, using a piece of square tubing that I cut up to flatten it out and make a flat plate. So we're going to keep flattening this thing out, and then we'll do a template on it, cut it out, and bend it where we need to. All right, guys, so far we've made a little bit of progress on the bracket for the transmission. So this is actually going to mount to the transmission. It's got those 4 holes that bolt it in. And then this plate, we're going to weld this in the center. Find center between here and here, and find center on here, and then put it where it belongs. And we're going to burn it in on each side. Terry's going to do that when he takes it to work. And then this will mount up in there, and then the transmission mount is going to mount somewhere in here, and then we'll trim off the excess after we get it in the car and see where the transmission mount's going to fit. And then we're going to weld an additional 1/8" plate. So both of these plates are 1/8. So this is some 2-inch square tubing that we bent out over top of a 10-pound weight that he had. Happened to be shaped in a damn pentagram. So we were able to... or pentagon, not a pentagram, but we were able to hit it over top of that, and it was the perfect angle to match up with the transmission. And then this plate is the piece of square tubing that we flattened out, trying out our blacksmith hands. And yeah, it turned out to be a pretty flat, pretty decent looking plate. So, and it's 1/8 thick. So we're gonna, like I said, we're gonna weld those to center, and then we'll drill out, we'll mark where the transmission mount's going to go on here, and we'll cut the excess off of the back and taper it down, and then we'll drill our holes for the transmission mount, and then we'll add an additional 1/8 plate on here, so that it'll be a total of a 1/4 inch thick for where the transmission mounts, and it'll be an 1/8 thick where it bolts onto the transmission. All right, so I'm pretty sure that today is going to be the day that we're going to try and start the Lexus. We're going to cut and modify the fuel line coming from the car up to the engine. We've already got the fuel line for the engine modified, and we've got an AN6 fuel line running down to where we can hook it up to the existing fuel line from the car. We just have to modify that side of the fitting for the car. The transmission mounting bracket has been made. We just got to put 2 nuts on it for the actual transmission bracket. Everything else is fit and made to the car. So we're going to do that, do the exhaust, add some oil to it, and then we should be able to start it up and see what's going to happen. So I'm going to get underneath the car and show you the transmission mounting bracket after it's been modified. Terry did a shit ton of work to it and made it work exactly how it needed to work. And so we're going to continue on with this thing. So here's the transmission mount. I know it's kind of difficult to see, but we made that bracket right there, and it's shaped the same as the transmission bracket. So there's one of the mounting bolts, and then the other one is up here, right there. So it's all made. We just gotta get these 2 nuts on here. Once we get those done, then we'll get everything bolted in, get the fuel line set, and get it to where we can, and then we'll get it to where we can get the car started. We'll get the exhaust run down a little bit further than where it is right now. We've got some 12-inch pipes cut to extend the exhaust down a little bit past the firewall. That way we're not building up heat right up against the firewall. We'll eventually wind up making a full straight pipe exhaust for this thing, but for right now we're just going to run basically 12-inch pipes off the headers, and it's just going to be straight pipe right there for the time being. This is just a test to make sure all the electronics are working, fuel system's going to work, all that kind of stuff. So we'll see how it goes. In order to make this fuel line work, the existing fuel line on the car needed to have a fitting added to it, and the fuel line on the engine needed a fitting added to it, and then we did a 12-inch AN6 fuel line to hook up the 2 fittings. So this is an AN6 fitting, but you put this on the hose, and then you screw this into the center, and it will compress the hose in between this and here, and creates a fluid tight, airtight fit. And then you can, this is a swivel, so then you can screw this into your other hose that's going to run up to the engine. So I've already put one of these on the fuel rail. Now I'm adding it to the bottom of the car. All I did was cut the end of the original fuel line off right at the metal fitting. So now I'm going to slide this onto the hose, and then I'll screw this into it, and then I'll hook up the other side of the fuel line after we drain the gas tank. So what we're doing with the exhaust, you can see how close the steering shaft is to the exhaust, but it does not interfere. I can't rotate it because the steering column's locked, but it doesn't interfere with it. We did have to suck the header in towards the engine a little bit, which entailed cutting the runners off of the front of the exhaust manifold where it bolts to the engine and shortening them, and then rewelding this. And then we're gonna have to run a pipe from here down. We're gonna have to add a heat shield here because we don't want to cook the brake lines. So we'll have to add I've got a 12-inch piece of pipe cut to go from right here down to about right here. And then we'll have the exhaust travel along this track and go behind the transmission mount before it will join with the other side. And then we'll do an X pipe back there. And then I don't know if we'll do true duals all the way back, or if we'll do a single pipe back and then a dual exit muffler. Haven't really gotten to that point yet. But as far as the headers go, we're gonna run it from here, and this side is the exact same way. It's cut off at the exact same spot, because we're not gonna use the original 3-bolt collectors. We're gonna get some universal collectors and weld them on here. So this pipe is gonna go straight down, and I need to essentially add a heat shield just like this to this side so that I don't cook the brake lines. But we're gonna get that pipe on here, get it back to about here. That way the exhaust isn't going straight up the firewall and melting stuff while we're trying to test everything. So that's where we're at. And then this is how the fuel line goes together. So I've got this fitting on here, started screwing this in. All I need to do is just continue tightening it down, and it'll get so tight that this won't leak and it won't come off of the hose. And then we can screw this in to the other side of our fuel line, which is right here. So, all right guys, so right now for the Lexus, what we're doing is we're getting the relays for the solenoids in the transmission, in the automatic transmission. We're gonna get those mounted in. Gonna add a 6-pin connector because there's 6 connections coming off of here. That way when we go to pull the motor, we don't have to pull the relays with the motor. We can leave them in the car. We can just disconnect the 6-pin connector. So these relays are gonna mount on this bracket that Terry made, and they're gonna sit right here on the back side of the shock tower. And we're gonna have the wires run up along the back side of here, and we're gonna put a 6-pin connector either here or here. We'll put it somewhere in the line, but we've got a 6-pin connector that we got to add, and that's going to be mounted back here. So it should turn out really nice. All right guys, so we've got one side of our 6-pin connector for our relays hooked up. This is a Painless Performance wiring connector that we got from Summit. So just a normal 6-pin male and female waterproof connector, and we're going to have this sitting right here have the male side hook in right here, and then the wire is going to come across here and go back to the relays. So technically, once we get the relays installed on here, we got to finish the wiring for the relays, just the receiving side of the connector. Once we get that done, we're going to put some fuel in it, and we're going to pump the fuel out of the fuel line and get all the old gas out of the gas tank. I'll save it so that I can run it through a lawnmower. I won't put it in a car, but I'll run it through a lawnmower. But we're going to basically put a gallon or two in the tank. We're going to pump out what we can before we add any gas to it. Then we're going to add some gas to it and pump all of that back out of it, and then we'll put fresh gas in it. Then we'll hook the fuel line up, and then we'll try and start the motor. All right, just so nobody questions whether I soldered these together or not, they are soldered together. So all the ends of these are soldered together. I'm throwing heat shrink on them, color coded so that it'll be easier to identify when I hook them up to the 6-pin connector on the car. But it started raining again, so we may not be able to get it to start today. All right, guys, so I just got done soldering the wires onto the relays, or the resistors, I mean. So I did color coding to keep it straight as far as to what power and ground go to each resistor, or positive and negative, not really power and ground. But so I've got the other ends of the wires marked as well. So when I go to put it in the car after all this rain stops, because it's been raining like crazy out here, once all the rain stops, I go to take this out to the car and hook it up to the 6-pin connector. That'll get me to where I know what black wire goes to what relay and what red wire I know goes to what relay. So I've got red, black, and green corresponding to red, black, and green up here at the other end of the wires. All right, guys, it is 10 to midnight. Probably not the perfect time to be doing this, but I really don't give a shit. I'm really ready to hear this freaking Lexus run. And me and Terry are out here right now. We got everything prepped. We pushed all the old gas out of it, put fresh gas in it. We just hooked the battery up, turned everything on, made sure everything was communicating the way that it's supposed to. So no weird warnings. The fuel pump's priming and everything. So now we're going to go ahead and I'm going to have Terry give it the first crank. She hasn't even been crunk. We turned it on and had power come on, but the engine has not been turned over. So now I'm going to have Terry go turn the engine over. Aww. Why is it not turning? Hit it again. Are we sure this battery's strong enough? Because it sounds like that battery's fucking dead. Because it should crank over regardless. We never tightened down the negative. Hold on. All right, guys, we had a little mishap. Forgot to put the ground wires onto the block from the chassis. So just got done hooking up the 2 ground wires that we've got on here. And so now, third time's a charm. Hopefully this thing's going to crank over this time. Well, it's cranking over. That's a good sign. We got gas leaking. To provide a little context for the fuel leak wound up being a leaking O-ring from one of the injectors that we replaced. And it was the top O-ring going from the injector into the fuel rail. It had gotten rolled and we were not aware of it. So it was just dumping fuel out of the top side of the fuel injector. So we just took it apart, replaced the O-ring, put it back together, fuel leak solved, and now it's on to the immobilizer. All right, everybody. So the reason that the Lexus will not start is because the key fob that was given to Terry when he purchased the engine and the ECU and all that together didn't have the freaking immobilizer chip in it. We didn't know. So now we have to figure out how to fix the immobilizer on this car. What I've done is I've done a little bit of research, and I got to give a big compliment and shout out to Ding, I think is his name, Den, the tuner with kids. He did this research. He had linked it to another video that shows how to modify the tool that I'm going to use. But I'm going to try his method and see if I can make it work for myself. It looks relatively simple. And I'm going to link his video down in my description. But I'm going to try and copy the immobilizer data out of the 2J computer and then copy the immobilizer data out of the 1UZ. And then I'm going to change the 1UZ data to match the 2J data so that the original key for the IS300, the original reluctor ring and all that stuff should be able to work with the 1UZ computer, because all I had to do is change the 3 wires that hook up to the computer that send the send and receive signal from the transponder and the power wire. So all I had to do is just reconfigure those 3 wires in the ECU pinout, and I'm able to reuse everything else that's in the system. So I'm going to try and make it to where the car is going to start with the original key from the IS without the need of any additional key fob or anything, just the key that he used it to start with the 2J with the 1UZ computer. And it should work. They both use the same chip. I've already researched it. They both use the IC900 chip and it's a, whatever the number is, I'll freaking show later in the video when I'm doing the software to copy it. But yeah, this is what we're doing. So hopefully this works. All right, so I just had this little thing arrive from Amazon. I bought it. It was $10, and then it was like $8 for shipping to get it here. It was supposed to be here tomorrow, so I'm glad it actually got delivered a day early. But yeah, it got delivered a day early, so I'm gonna go ahead and do the modifications that I have to do to this to make it work with automotive computer chips, because I have to have 5 volts instead of 3 volts. And then I'm going to take this ECU apart. This is the one for the 2J. So there's the 2J GE automatic transmission. So I'm going to pull this one apart. I'm going to copy the information off of this chip. And then I'm going to pull the 1U computer out of the IS, bring it up here and do the same thing. And then I'll transfer the data from this one onto the 1U. So just obviously to take this thing apart, you just take these 6 screws out. All right, once those 6 screws are out, you can just pick the thing up. The lid just comes off. Now you have 2 additional screws that you have to take out. They're right here. All right, so now we have the circuit board. And the chip that I'm looking for is, let me try and get it to focus. Right there, IC900. So that's the one that I need to mess with. And what I have to do is I actually have to clean the, I have to clean all the, there's flux over top of the chip. So I have to clean all these terminals here and on the other side so that I can get this little tool to clip onto it. But that's the one that I need to use. So IC900 is right there. So now I can't get it to refocus. There we go. So on this one, it's right here. On the one that Den did in his video, it was like over here somewhere, but the one on this one's right here. And this is out of a 2001. So he may have been doing a newer ECU, but this is a 2001 IS2J with the VVTi. All right, so here's all the pieces that came in the kit. Just pulled it out of the package. So there's the clip that's going to go on to the actual chip, and that's what's going to read the information. It's going to be transferred through this cable into one of these adapters that plugs into this circuit board to make it communicate with the computer. But I got a little bit of modifications that I got to do to it before I can make it work. And yeah, I'm going to have to cut this open. But now I just got to get this opened, and I got to make some modifications to some of the circuits in here. And I got to make some jumpers for some of these pins. So we'll see. All right, everybody. So it's going to be a little bit more challenging for me to do the modifications that I have to do to mine, because the trace that I have to cut from that 3.3 volt pin is on this side, in between here and here. It's going to be very difficult for me to break that trace, but I'm going to do it. So I'll break that trace, and then I'll solder from the 5 volt to pin 8, either one of them, and that way it'll provide the right power. Okay, so now I'm having a hard time seeing it, but you can just barely see the trace that I need to cut. So it is right there where the shiny part is. Be the second pin over from the right. But I got to cut that trace. There, now you should be able to see it. So I got to cut that trace, and that'll kill the 3 volt power going to the pin. And then I'll just add a jumper wire from the 5 volt right here, from 5 volt over to pin 8 right there. All right, so now you can see I broke the trace right there. I'm going to break it a little bit better just to make sure that it doesn't make contact, but that's really all I have to do. All right, there, now you can see it's completely broken. So, teeny tiny. It's really hard to see. I'm having to use my camera zoomed in to see if I broke it or not. And all I did was I pulled these little yellow pieces off of the prongs so that I could expose that part to get to it to cut it. Now that I've got that cut, I'm going to put those yellow spacers back on. All right, now that that's done, I'm going to test and make sure that I don't have continuity between the 3.3 volt pin and the number 8 pin. So, where is it? There it is. 3.3. Damn it. No continuity anymore. No continuity anymore. So we are good. So now the only other modification that I got to do to this is I have to pull the middle pin on this little piece right here. So I'm going to use my butane torch soldering iron to heat the solder up. And then I'm going to peel the piece up with my razor blade. I hate soldering on circuit boards. I'm not good at it. I don't know if I don't have my heat high enough or what, but I suck at soldering circuit boards. All right, so now you can see that center tab is no longer connected. It was a little harder than I thought. I just wound up cutting it with 10 snips that I had in my old electrical engineering kit from when I went to college. But yeah, so I just cut the lead on the center pin, and now all my mods to this are done, except I still need to add my 5-volt reference wire from right there, that pin, over to pin 8. So I'm going to add that. All right, guys, so I stayed up until a little after 2 a.m. last night trying to get all this working. And instead of trying to solder all this stuff together, I was doing it, but I soldered it together incorrectly. And rather than trying to redo it, I just made it out of hardwire. So I made all my jumpers straight through, just regular wire, solid strand, but it's the same size as the pins. So that wire is the same diameter as the pins. So I'm just using the wire instead. Basically made the jumper. I've copied the IC900 out of the IS300 ECU. And I just brought the 1UZ ECU up here, and I'm gonna read the IC900 info off of it. But the reason I stayed up until 2 a.m. was trying to get the drivers working on my laptop, because I'm running Windows 10 and running the AS programmer, and I kept putting the wrong driver in there. I had to have parallel, and it took me a little bit to find the right driver. But once I got the right driver, it's been working great. So now I'm gonna do a 1UZ and dump that data into dump the 300 data into the 1UZ, and we'll go from there. Okay, so on the 1UZ ECU, the IC900 is down here in the bottom corner. So that one right there. You can see it has the same number, 93C56. So right there, it's that one right there. So, and it comes apart the same as the 2J computer. There's 2 screws that are holding the heat sinks down right here. So those 2 screws are holding it to the cage, and then the outer bolts are what are holding the case together. But I'm gonna clean the contacts off on that chip right there so that I can put my reader on there. I'm gonna read the data off of there and then compare the data with what I got out of the IS300. So up to this point, I have been able to copy the information out of both of the ECUs off of the IC900 chip. And instead of trying to copy the data from the Lexus or from the IS300 into the 1UZ, because the format's not actually matching up correctly, and there's 4 keys programmed to the original IS300 computer, and the 1UZ had 3 keys plus 2 valet keys programmed, and I could see those clearly because I have a breakdown of that EEPROM coding for the hex bits. But for the 2001, I don't have a breakdown of the hex bits on it because it does not match anything that was in Den's video as far as what he was changing. So he must have a newer style hex format. So I can tell which ones are the keys, but I don't want to input the wrong data. So what I want to do is I want to try and do the learning procedure. So I virginized the 1UZ ECU Immobilizer data. So it should go into programming mode. When we hook the battery up and put the key in the ignition, it should go into programming mode and recognize that key and set it as the master key. Then I should be able to just go in there and look at where it set that data, which I already know where it sets that data. And then I'll just duplicate that data in for all 4 keys. And then if he wants to add additional keys later, I can change it to where we'll add additional keys to it. And I may not even need to make all 4 of them to where they match. I may only need to teach 1 key, but I think that the computer has to see 4 keys, so we may have to duplicate the data in order to satisfy the computer, but I don't know. We'll find that out when I get into it. But I've got the computer reinstalled in the car. Terry just got up, so now I'm gonna go see if we can get the learning procedure done and crank the car up. All right, everybody, I did not capture the first time that this thing actually started, but we had it running. Go ahead, Terry. It's running, but for some reason it's not responding to the throttle pedal. So we got to figure out what's going on there. But it was sitting here and idle great. So yeah, we're getting there. How happy are you about the damn motor running?
Sounds good.
Sounds good. Is the payoff worth it so far?
Oh, yeah. About to skip this wedding.
All right, brother. So as you could just see in the video, the Lexus is running on its own. I got to figure out why it's not responding to the throttle cable though. This has got a throttle cable that actuates a reader. I don't know why in the world they did a electronic reader that's cable driven to drive an electronic throttle body when it's on the fucking throttle body. Why couldn't they just leave it as a cable drive throttle body? Whatever. Anyway, it's not actuating the butterfly valve, so we're not able to change the RPMs on the engine. But that's the first start. This is the very first time we've ever had anything hooked up on this thing. So for it to crank over and run as smooth as it did with just the throttle issue being the only issue with everything that I repinned on that ECU, that's a pretty good damn deal as far as I'm concerned. So, found out the reason why the car wouldn't move with the throttle, or why the engine would not idle up with the throttle. And it was because this connection wasn't all the way seated. It looked like it was completely seated, but it was sticking out about 1/8 of an inch. I pushed it in and it clipped, started the car, and now the throttle works. All right, guys, so the security system is still in, or the ECU is still in learn mode for the keys because we only have one key. So, but it still starts and runs. So I'm gonna, I'm probably gonna go write some just BS data into the other key locations so that I can satisfy the learning procedure, and we'll just go from there. But I'm gonna crank the car up so that you can actually hear it run like it's supposed to. And it's running freaking great. So yeah, everything seems to be checking out pretty good. Yeah, we've got traction control light, battery light because we don't have the all. And I think we've got a leaking fuel injector.
Off my shoe.
Yeah, I think we've got a leaking fuel injector up on the front end too. A different one. Really, really pleased with how this is coming along. We should be able to make a little bit more progress here coming up. And then we're gonna, once we get it running a little bit better, we're gonna pull the motor out, do what little bit of stuff we gotta do with the motor out, get the shifter squared away. Then we'll put the motor back in, and she'll be ready to drop on the ground unless he wants to start doing suspension stuff, and that's on him. So yeah, hope y'all like this video. Hope it helps you out if you're trying to do this project. And like always, if you like what you saw in this video, please like, comment, share, subscribe, let your friends see what I'm doing, and I'll catch you in the next video. I should have a video related to the Veloster rear-wheel drive swap probably posted in a day or two. So hope you guys enjoy the content that I'm trying to put out. So if you are, let me know. Thanks. Have a great one.